Hello, I'm Edwin E. Gordon. On the following recordings, I will be offering a brief introduction to each chapter of the 1997 edition of Learning Sequences in Music, Skill, Content, and Patterns. Part 1, The Foundation. Chapter 1, Audiation. I think the best way to begin this is to give you a short definition of audiation, and then I shall try to elaborate as the half hour goes on. Simply, the ability to audiate is to be able to hear music and to understand that music when the sound is not physically present. In other words, audiation is to music what thought is to language. Now, if I were to say to you, listen to this. Bum ba da da ba ba da bum ba da ba ba bum. At this point, you are rehearing it, you might say. The sound is physically gone of the music, but yet somehow or other, the memory of it lingers. Now, if you are just hearing it, I can't be sure that you're audiating. But if you know, for example, bum ba da da ba ba da bum ba da ba ba bum. Now, if you were to say to me, for example, I know that was in major, or I know it was in duple, or bum ba da da ba bum, I hear a chord change there, and I hear the tonic going to the dominant seventh. Those would be examples of audiation. If I were to say to you right now, can you audiate a harmonic progression of 1-4-5-1? Or can you think of the tune Jingle Bells? And would you be able to sit and at the piano or with a guitar and make recordings in the sense that you would be able to play the right chord progressions to Jingle Bells or to Happy Birthday? That would be another type of audiation. Or I could say to you right now, listen please. Bum ba da ba da ba ba da bum ba da ba da ba bum bum ba da ba da ba ba da bum ba da ba da ba bum. And if I asked you what the meter would be, you are now, I hope, hearing it. And if you're audiating it, you would be able to say to me, well, in learning theory terminology, that's unusual meter. Just about anything like that would be a matter of audiation. If I said to you right now, can you please audiate Dorian for me? Well, I don't know what's going on in your mind, but if you would be able to audiate Dorian, I wouldn't want you to start singing a scale for me or saying, oh, it goes from D to D on the white keys of the piano. But could you hear la da 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 ba bum, la da da bum bum, ya da da ba bum bum ba da ba ba bum bum bum, la da da dum bum bum? Well, of course, you wouldn't have to hear that melody, but if you were hearing any melody in Dorian, or if you knew, for example, what chords you would like to use to harmonize it, would you be using a 1, 4, and a 5, or would you be using a 1 and a 4 and a subtonic, or a 7? That would be a matter of audiation. Other persons audiate when they compose. Persons audiate when they improvise. There are persons who audiate simply when they arrange music. If I say to you right now, can you audiate a flute and a bassoon playing in unison 2 octaves apart? Well, that'd be audiating a timbre. Well, I think I've given you just about as much as I can in a very short definition of what audiation is, but to say to you that it is basic for all types of music understanding and instruction. We can, for example, teach children or teach adults or teach anybody at any age, to memorize. But there are many persons who memorize music but don't audiate what they're playing. I might ask you, if you do play an instrument, think of the last recital you played or your graduation recital perhaps. Were you audiating what you played? Did you hear the modulations? Did you know that a modulation took place? And did you know where it was? Metrical as well as tonal. Were you aware, for example, of other things in the music? For example, repetition, sequence. Well, many persons are. But if I said to you, what was the tonality of the music? Well, some persons might say, well, the key signature was 2 sharps. Well, that doesn't tell me what the tonality is. If you were in major, 2 sharps would tell me that D, then of course you'd be in major. But if you were in 2 sharps, and you could be minor tonality, it could be B minor tonality. So looking at a key signature, telling me what a key signature is doesn't really tell me what the tonality is. Moreover, looking at a measure signature, 2/4 or 6/8. I mean, I could say for you, ba-da, be-a, ba-ba-ba-da, be-a, ba-ba-ba, and that would be 6/8, but I wouldn't want you to tell me that's triple, or some of you might even say compound tuple. You'd have to audiate the music to know what it is. You can't really tell from looking at a key signature or a measure signature. So therefore, then, audiation is something that is in the mind. It's not read necessarily. You can't tell from notation all you need to know about audiation. And I suspect what I'm really trying to get to is to say, please, in your mind, make a distinction between being able to memorize a piece of music and being able to audiate it. I'm afraid that many persons who can memorize and have played many recitals don't really audiate what they've played. You can almost tell that by their phrasing or their lack of sensitivity. They're in a way that I hope isn't too disparaging. They're just typing out the notes. They're not really thinking of turning a phrase or... Well, think of the number of persons in an audience, for example, who start clapping between movements or don't know when to clap. Think of them. They can't literally hear a cadence. They don't know when something has come to rest. They don't know the difference between a half cadence and a full cadence. That tells you that they're not audiating, but certainly they're sitting and listening. Well, many persons listen but don't audiate. Well, why do I make such a big to-do about this? Well, because audiation is the basis of all music learning, just like thought is the basis of all understanding in language. My goodness, if you can't think, how would you ever really be able to understand a language? You are thinking all the time that somebody's talking. For example, when I audiate, I say to you, you're not memorizing, because you can memorize and still not audiate. Well, what about imitation? Well, think of the number of persons who imitate. The teacher says, do it this way, or persons listen to a record and do what somebody else has done. Well, they're imitating, but that's not necessarily audiation. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can imitate and audiate at the same time. Either you imitate or you audiate. If you memorize, it's possible you can audiate, I suspect, but if you don't memorize, I think you're going to audiate a lot better. Remember, there's a big difference between memorization and memory. Memory is a very large part of audiation, but memorization isn't. You tend to remember, to have memory as a result of audiating, just like I think you're remembering what I've said without memorizing it. You have thought about it, and that's important. If I were to say to you, please memorize every word I've just said, I'm not sure you'd really understand me. So, audiation then is not memorization. Certainly it's not imitation. There are some persons who use the term inner hearing. Well, I don't know how you hear other than inner hearing. I mean, there's no such thing as outer hearing. Certainly you can inner hear, but again, you can hear it. Obviously, inner, outer, whatever you want to call it, hearing is hearing. And you can hear it and still not audiate it. So inner hearing itself is not anything terribly special. Yes, I sing to you right now. You've heard it. You're inner hearing it now, you might say, because the sound is no longer physically present. But did you know it was Lydian? So yes, you can inner hear, but you still may not be able to audiate. Well, I have found through my research that audiation is basic. That without audiation, really learning can't take place in music to any sophisticated degree. All we can do is be mechanical. We can memorize, we can imitate, do our jobs, type out the notes, and I'm not sure that that's really what we're after in music education. So let me now just briefly, I hope I've given you a pretty good understanding of what audiation is in its very simplest form. So let me see if I can introduce you to the chapter by saying to you, we have 8 types of audiation. For example, you can listen to music and audiate. Now you might say to me, well, God, when you listen to music, isn't the sound physically present? And sure it is, but pretty soon it stops being physically present. Just like you're listening to me speak now, the sound is physically present, but what I've just said a moment ago is no longer physically present. So you're listening to what I have said as you are listening to what I am saying. And that provides the basis for thought. And so therefore then, as you are listening to me sing, if I say bada bia bada ba bada bia bada bada ba bum bum badum and so forth, la da bada. Now that should remain in your mind as you hear yada ba badum. Now all of that stays in your mind as you hear the la da bada bia ba bum. Unless all of that stays in your mind, unless you are retaining what you've just heard as you are listening to what you are hearing, I don't think you can give meaning to music, and of course you can't give meaning to speech. So you're audiating when you're listening because the sound, while it is physically present, what you're audiating is no longer physically present. And I might also point out to you that while you're listening to me speak, not only are you retaining what I've just said as you're listening to what I'm saying, but you're also predicting what you think I will say next. And by the way, that same thing happens in music. Yum ba da dum bum ba dum bum ba da ba dum. I'm sure you are predicting bum bum. You are predicting bum. And if that doesn't happen, you go back and recheck through your audiation and begin to enjoy the music. I mean, that's literally was what made Mozart so great. Your prediction many times didn't come out to be accurate, but yet what he did was so artistic you couldn't help but regroup and then you just truly understand what he did and have a wonderful enjoyment. And that all came through expectation, anticipation, prediction. So yes, type 1 is when you listen to music, and just think of how many persons go to concerts and don't audiate, but they listen. That's like going to a lecture and listening and not understanding. It's no wonder that we have such difficulties in maintaining audiences, because we in music schools have a tendency to do our very best to educate performers, but we don't see to it that there's somebody out there to listen to them who can audiate, and therefore really demand them and really have an opportunity to give them employment and really appreciate them. Well, anyway, enough said about that. Type 2, when you read notation, musical notation, if you cannot hear what the notation is telling you, that is, if you can't hear the pitches, that means you're not audiating what you see. By the way, we call that notational audiation. To be able to look at music notation and to be able to hear what it's saying to you, it should sing to you. If all you're doing is pressing fingers on a keyboard or on an instrument, that's not really reading. Again, that's like using a typewriter in a language that you don't understand. And how many persons do that? And then we wonder why so many persons don't persist in the playing of an instrument. Well, you can't really blame them, because how long would you like to be using a typewriter if you didn't understand what you were typing? Just to press the right key because you see a symbol on a page doesn't mean that you're doing anything worthwhile. Well, so that would be type 2, reading. And by the way, learning theory, as we get into it, will be taking all these types of audiation into consideration, how we learn when we learn to do these things. That's the whole point of music learning theory. The types of audiation and the stages, which we'll talk about momentarily, are all introductions to music learning theory. That's where music learning theory is going. To simply say, oh, well, we teach aesthetic education, or we're teaching in the old term music appreciation, to me that's just nonsense. You have to understand to enjoy, to appreciate, to have an aesthetic response. If you don't, you're only having those responses at a very minimal, low level. In the same way I often think when I go to Switzerland, I go to a cafe and I hear French spoken one place, English another, German, French, Italian. And let's say I don't understand any of those languages, but yet I say, oh, I like this one better because it sounds better. Well, if you're saying that's what so many persons do who go to a concert and they can just say, oh, I like the sound of this better, but they don't understand it, I think that's really cheating them. And certainly we're cheating persons when we educate them only to that extent, or even try to educate them to that extent. Okay, so let's talk then about writing, a third type of audiation. Can you hear something right now? Think of a tune, sing one. Can you put it down in notation? Would you put down a notation just to even think about putting down the Star Spangled Banner? It's amazing how many persons I've asked to do this who are supposedly students in schools of music, and they might try to write the Star Spangled Banner in duple, and they forget to put the raised fourth step in. La-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. They miss that. La-da-dum, bum, ba-dum. Don't even know it. Well, that tells me that, again, that's another type of notational audiation, and unless you can do it, I would say you're not really audiating. So can you take down a familiar tune from dictation, a familiar or unfamiliar tune from dictation? Can you read familiar or unfamiliar music? And if you can, I'd say you are audiating. If you can hear what familiar or unfamiliar music sounds like without having the actual sound, but just looking at notation, that's type 2. If you can write it, that's type 3. Type 4, recalling and performing. I would say if you can sit down and play, or stand up as you will, and play something at a recital, and you just recall what it was you wanted to play and you perform it, and you understand where the cadences come, where the modulations are, so you can tell the audience, so you can emphasize, so you can have direction, so you can grasp your audience and make them really excited about what they're hearing. I would say then you're audiating as you perform. If you're just playing the notes, I can't really say for sure that you're audiating. So I'd say a fifth type then is recalling and writing, just what I asked you to do with the Star Spangled Banner. In type 3, you might be hearing something from dictation, whereas in type 5, I'm asking you to recall something. Recall a tune that you know, just put it down. Type 6, creating and improvising, and that might be while you're performing music or you're just doing this in silence. There are many times I just sit around and improvise chord progressions that I think are very interesting. Absolutely no sound. I do this when I'm driving a car, or I might even be hearing a tune and I'm just hearing the chords. I'm be hearing a melody, and I'm hearing the chords silently. So I'm improvising a harmonic structure to what I'm hearing, or I could just be creating a tune in silence. Many of the songs I've written for young children certainly is a type 6. I create in silence. Now also there are persons who can create and improvise, of course, as they did in the Baroque and as many jazz musicians do today while they're performing. So it's not in silence. And by the way, I should say to you, improvisation is probably one of the foremost types of performance, and I'm not necessarily talking about jazz. Jazz is important, of course, but it's so funny when I just use the word improvisation these days, everybody thinks jazz are synonymous. They're not. I have children in the elementary grades improvising. They may be doing it in a jazz style, but they don't have to. If I say, would you please listen to this, audiate the progression 1-5-7-1, now sing a melody. While you're audiating that progression, ba-da-bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Certainly that's not jazz, but it certainly is improvisation and creating and improvising. Well, now, type 7, again, I'm calling it creating and improvising, and you are doing this, and you are doing it while you're reading. And there are many persons who do this from reading figured bass or chord symbols. And of course, creating and improvising unfamiliar music while writing it. And of course, that to me would be a very high level order. And most persons, of course, create, and it is unfamiliar music, and they just put it down. So these are all types of audiation, which I'd like you to read about, and I go through them in detail and try to do the very best I can with them. Now, I've talked about the 8 types of audiation, and I think that it's important that I also talk about the 6 stages of audiation. So let me go through that just rather quickly. We have a few minutes left, and we'll see what we can do with this. Stage 1 is if you hear something, ba-da-bum, you have a momentary retention. And, I try to explain this by saying if I were to ask you to look at the ceiling and see some glaring light and then close your eyes, there would be an after image. And unless you give that after image meaning, give it a definition, you're going to lose it. And so that momentary retention, you have to hang on to it or else you can't get to stage 2. And you will notice even so many persons who have the after image and they make something of the design that now comes to their sighting with their eyes closed, they can lose it very, very quickly. So momentary retention, stage 1, is you're just hearing the sound and then it comes, and now you're trying to make sense. You're trying to audiate. You're trying to give it meaning, because literally music is noise until you give it meaning. And you have to start sorting out those sounds and explaining to yourself in audiation what it is you are hearing. So now, let's say this happens and it's momentary, and I'd hate to see that go on for more than a few seconds because I think you will lose it. But if you can get to stage 2 very quickly, what I find happening as we research this is that somebody begins to put this sound into tonal patterns and rhythm patterns. In other words, ba-da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-bum-bum-bum-bum, or ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And so they begin then to recognize tonal patterns, and they get a tonal center. Bum. So that's what gives them the leverage to start audiating. They have to get, let us say, a focus, a basis, a place of stability, a center of balance. And that's by recognizing where the macro beats are, bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, or bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, or bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. You can put them where you please. It's totally subjective, but yet nobody can tell you where they have to be or where that tonal center has to be. But if it is objective, fine. And if it is subjective, fine too. But it has to be audiated, because unless you give either objectivity or subjectivity to the tonal center or the macro beats, I don't think you can go on to stage 3, which is to establish objective and subjective tonality and meter. Many persons get confused by this objective and subjective tonality and meter. And I'd like to just say a little bit about that if I can. If I sing something to you in major or minor, we would say, most of us would agree, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, would be the tonic or the resting tone. I think there'd be little disagreement. But yada be a ba-da ba, yada be ba ba-dum ba. Now just what yadum bum be bum bottom bum 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 bum. Well, some persons might say this is the resting tone, others might say this, and still others this. Well, that's subjectivity. But it doesn't matter whether there's consensus that it is objective. It can be subjective. So long as you are giving it meaning and you know where a tonal center is, that's really what you have to do at stage 3, is to get that from the tonal center to now establish a tonality. And from the macro beats, ba, 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 to your ba, da, ba, 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 or do, day, do, to, day, to, day, to, do, day. So from those macro beats, you say it's not do, da, dee, do, to, dee, do, da, dee, do, but it's do, day, do, to, day, to, do. And so that stage 3 is extremely important to get subjective or objective tonality and meter. And so much popular music, of course, is subjective. When I say popular, I do certainly mean popular, and you can also include in that contemporary music. But I would say no matter how hard a composer would try to write music that doesn't have a tonality, or what he might call atonal, I don't think you can stop a listener from imposing a tonality on it. May be subjective, probably will be, but unless the listener does that, I don't think there's going to be any audiation. So to me, there really is no atonal music. There's just subjective tonality. It can't be atonal, it's probably multitonal, and we'll be talking about that later, but it has a subjectivity about it. So now we go to stage 4. And it goes back to what I was saying before. As you're listening to the music, you are retaining an audiation, the tonal patterns and the rhythm patterns that you heard in the music. And unless you retain them, it's going to be very, very difficult to give meaning to what you are hearing, because we give meaning to what we are hearing on the basis of what we have heard. And I think I've tried to explain that before. If this is giving you difficulty, please just think about speech. You know, language and music have very little in common as far as being correlated or related, but remember that the process for learning language is almost the same for learning music, in the way we have these stages and so forth. Just the way we have to retain words and language, we have to retain patterns in music. If not, how can there be meaning? Go! Well, if I haven't said anything before then, there's very limited meaning. But if I say, you know, I see a stoplights and there's go and there's stop, now I say go. Go takes on a whole new meaning, and I should say some complex meaning. So, stage 5. Believe it or not, if you are listening to this music, you're retaining what you've just heard while you are listening. If you're going to be audiating, you have to start saying or asking yourself, where have you heard patterns like this before in other music? For example, if you haven't heard Phrygian, if you haven't heard a lot of Phrygian, I don't think you're going to be able to do very much at stage 4, because at stage 5 you're going to try to give those patterns in Phrygian. Yada bum bum, la da 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 bum 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 bum. If you haven't heard that before, you're just going to be lost. So what you're doing then in stage 5 is just recalling where you've heard music like this before to help you understand what it is you're retaining and what you're hearing. And then, of course, where we get to probably the most important part is you're anticipating and predicting what you're going to be hearing next. For example, if you're anticipating something, I'd suspect it was familiar music. If you're predicting, you're probably doing that with unfamiliar music. And unless all of these 6 stages are going on, you're not thoroughly engaged in audiation. And I would say you're extremely lacking in the enjoyment of music, the understanding of music. Now, what about all of this? Can this be taught? Of course it can. And we'll be talking about that in due time in Chapter 3. But of course, the extent to it that you can learn it or any of your students can learn it is based upon music aptitude, potential to learn it. But everybody can learn to some extent. This is just not for a few select or chosen few. It's for everybody. And we're going to be talking a great deal about teaching to individual musical needs and individual musical differences. And if you know a person's potential and you know how we learn when we learn music, then it becomes rather simple to begin to teach somebody how to do this. And audiation then is the basis of all of this. So if you can just think about audiation, ask yourself about audiation, just start audiating yourself, and just about everything you read in the book, just don't deal with words, deal with music, and try to do your audiation as well as you can. Well, I think that takes care of Chapter 1, and I hope you'll read very, very carefully the definitions. And please, as I say in the introduction, in the book, just be careful. Don't try to skim this and take it to bed with you one night and say, oh, I've read Chapter 1 and that's it. It's going to require you to go over it, and don't be embarrassed or complaining about having to read it more than once. There's something there for you to comprehend. If you take the time and make the effort, you'll be pleased. Thanks very much, and we'll go on to Chapter 2 momentarily.